lesson is from the book of Psalms, Psalm 1. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all they do, they prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
When we hear the metaphor of like trees planted by streams of water, we probably think of something like the Pisgah National Forest. But remember, the psalmist is writing in an arid land. And so the psalmist probably pictures something more like this, where a tree can be a landmark for miles around, where a tree is a rare thing. And in this picture, there's no obvious source of water, but down below somewhere, there has to be a source of water for this tree to flourish in this arid land. And of course, the water is the law of God. And the law of God is the word Torah, which has several different overlapping meanings. It can mean the first 5 books of the Old Testament. It can mean the laws that are in those first 5 books. Or it can mean, just in general, God's instruction, God's teaching. And so for those of us who eat cheeseburgers and bacon, or even better, bacon cheeseburgers, we'll take this in the sense of God's general instruction and not necessarily those 613 laws in the first 5 books. So those who flourish, those who are happy, those who prosper, are those who seek their roots into God's instruction and into God's teaching. And the psalmist says they are happy. And he's not talking about when they go to heaven. He's talking about happiness in this life and in this world. And he says that they prosper, that they bear fruit. And understand, this is not a prosperity gospel passage. It's not saying that God somehow mechanically ensures, that God promises that if we are righteous, then we will prosper financially. It's not saying that. This is wisdom literature. It's based on observing life and how life tends to work. It's not about absolute laws, but about tendencies. And in fact, it is a common occurrence that groups, that when people follow God's law, they tend to prosper. The early Methodists are just one of many examples of this, but the early Methodists are a prime example. When John Wesley went out preaching in the fields, he was preaching to the coal miners and to the poorest of the poor, where alcohol abuse and gambling and prostitution were just rampant. And so the people were poor, their wages were poor, but their lifestyle made them even poorer. But when John Wesley preached to them about the grace of God and about the joy that was found in living and serving for God, the alcohol abuse went away. They quit gambling. They quit spending their money on things that were not productive. And then, when they used this money, went into business, some small business, the Bible taught them to be honest, to be fair and just in how they conducted their business. And so people wanted to do business with them. And so within 2 or 3 generations, the Methodists were mostly middle class. Now, Christ didn't die on the cross to make people middle class. Middle class people are not better than poor people. I'm not saying any of that. But it's just an observation of life that when people follow God's instructions, life goes better than when they disregard God's teaching and God's instruction. In this psalm, he makes a connection between wisdom and righteousness and wickedness and foolishness. Which raises the question, is he saying that it's a sin to be foolish? You might be surprised to know that basically he's saying, yes, it is a sin to be foolish. Because wisdom does not come from a high intellect. You can have an IQ of 240 and still be foolish. Wisdom is not a matter of intellect, but of obedience, of listening and following God's Word. And that makes you wise regardless of your IQ. And then the psalmist says that those who are like those trees that drink from the fountain of God's wisdom have roots. But those who disobey God and disregard God's teaching are like chaff. They're just blown hither and thither, and they don't take. They have no root. They just disobey. Now this psalm is one of about a dozen what's called wisdom psalms. Psalms about wisdom. And the wisdom literature is a very important part of the Bible. We have the whole book of Proverbs, but also Job and Ecclesiastes are part of the wisdom that's not based so much on the revelation of God, but on the observance of God's work in the world. Just to give you another example of a psalm that falls into this category, Psalm 49. Let's read the first 4 verses to begin with. Hear this, all you peoples. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world. This is for everyone. Both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak wisdom. The meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will solve my riddle to the music of the harp. And then the specific wisdom in this psalm is this. Do not be afraid when some become rich, when their wealth of their houses increase. For when they die, they will carry nothing away. Their wealth will not go after them. Though in their lifetime they count themselves happy, for you are praised when you do well for yourself. They will go to the company of their ancestors, who will never again see the light. Mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They are like the animals that perish. This is wisdom. Don't be afraid. Don't be in awe of people just because they're rich. Because when they die, their honors and their riches go to someone else. They can't take them with them. You've heard that, you can't take it with you. You know, that's straight out of the Bible. People go in the Bible and they say that. But it's true. And the wise person lives their whole life with the realization that riches are not the object of life. And that you can't take it with you. Now, Jesus was very embedded in this wisdom tradition. He used the teaching of wisdom in his own teaching. And one of the prime examples of this is Matthew 27, 24 through 27. This will be a very well-known parable. But it comes at the very end of the Sermon on the Mount. This is how Jesus concludes the Sermon on the Mount with this parable. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell. And great was its fall. But notice Jesus does not talk about the righteous man and the unrighteous man, but about the wise person and the foolish person. And the wise person is the one who acts on all that Jesus has been teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. And I don't think it does damage to his meaning to expand into all of his teaching and all of God's instruction in the Bible. That those who follow God's laws, God's teaching and instruction, are like a wise man or a tree planted by a stream. And all those who do not listen to God's instruction, who do not follow God's instruction, are like a foolish person. They're like chaff in the wind. And I think this way of looking at things, of seeing the connection between wisdom and righteousness and foolishness and unrighteousness, is important. It can help us. Last week we had a wonderful program for the Sunday School Hour on opioid addiction. And the man who came from the Counseling Center to talk to us about it was very complimentary that we were approaching this as in our Matthew 25 as care for the sick, that we were seeing addiction as an illness. And we were talking, some of us were talking afterwards and, talking about, well, yes, it's an illness, but are there questions of morality, of right and wrong? And we didn't put it in these words, but really kind of what we decided is those questions are above our pay scale. We'll let God sort out the morality of all that. But we can all agree that addiction is unwise. And that the wise thing to do is to do anything we can to help people avoid addiction or to get out of addiction, to be healed. There's other topics. When I talk to young people today, cohabitation, living together outside of marriage, if I talk to them about that's evil and they're evil people for doing this, they won't listen for half a second. For the younger people, they just don't see what the big deal is. They just don't see this as an issue. But when I talk to them about the wisdom of it, I point out that couples who live together before marriage have a higher divorce rate than couples who do not. That when people move in together, it's really hard to break up a relationship because now you're not just breaking up a relationship, you've got to worry about where you're going to live. And it causes people to stay in relationships longer than they should. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say, oh, they listen and they go, oh, okay, you're right. But at least we have the conversation. Because we're not talking about good and evil, but about wise and unwise. So to recap, the secret to a happy prosperous life is to drink in God's wisdom, to follow the instruction of God. You know, I got to be careful here. I don't want to mess up like I did a couple weeks ago. We could put a black and yellow cover on the Bible and retitle it, How to Be Smart for Dummies, or How to Be Wise for Dummies. So the way to live a good life, the way to avoid needless, foolish plans, is to follow God's instruction. Wisdom is not about intellect, but about obedience. We will write an essay on this.